The US dollar is beginning to plummet. De-dollarization is reaching its highest point ever. The US dollar will soon no longer be considered a reserve currency. These are subjects that have been discussed for years in this field and even in the financial industry. Additionally, it could appear to be an echo chamber. But what if I told you that all of this is part of a much larger plan that is currently taking place, particularly as we begin to see some well-known figures like the Fed, verifying a significant quick push in the direction of stable currency? Okay, have a seat and unwind. Everyone, welcome to Peepo Coin channel. By the end of this video, anybody who hasn't subscribed to the channel has done so. In the last year alone, the dollar has lost more than 35% of its purchase power, according to a recent article in Gold Telegraph. It's all beginning to come together. Right now, I have been keeping tabs on the US dollar's purchasing power. It's rather depressing to see how much value has been siphoned out of the US dollar if you look at the actual chart for it, which dates back to the early 1900s. And it's not only over time, you know. Yes, the dollar is worth less now. The strategy of action has caused it to lose value. For example, if we really consider it, the dollar suffered greatly from the Fed's founding. After we abolished the gold standard, things just took a sharp turn for the worst. This was planned. This is where we are now because it has been going on for decades. You could argue that it's absurd that this could not have been planned out for decades, but don't give up and watch the remainder of this video as I will cover a lot of ground behind what's actually happening here. First of all, let's begin with this video clip that I came across, which sort of discusses how we just ran into a brick wall. We are currently at an unsustainable level of debt, but it's more than just debt, isn't it? It includes both the creation of the US currency and the effects of our debt on a worldwide scale. In the United States, there is mistrust of the Treasury, not only because it was used as a weapon, but also because of the unmanageable, illogical, and impossible size of our national debt. Countries are eschewing the US dollar, albeit slowly, and not all at once. Death of 1,000 cuts is something I have discussed on this channel. Yes, although it won't happen straight away, it is now underway and happening. It comes from Matthew Pippenberg now. Take a look. There are central banks all around the world, but Eastern central banks in particular have had their foreign exchange reserves and access to US treasuries frozen since we sanctioned the dollar or Russia. Before then, we purchased roughly 118 tons of gold annually. The amount is currently around 290 after 2022. You must realize that there is a connection and a cause in this case. This treasury is distrusted not only because it was weaponized, but also because of the unaffordable, illogical, and unbelievable nature of our national debt. It is therefore a politicized and unwanted asset from a discredited issuer. Therefore, these are significant indicators that nations' central banks and economies are gradually but definitely shifting away from the US dollar, not all at once. Now pay attention. This is precisely what's taking place. We have turned a dollar into a weapon, have printed it in a grotesque manner throughout the past few decades. Even if people like Janet Yellen keep telling us that the debt isn't at unsustainable levels, the fact is that it is. The same thing was said by Jerome Powell as well. Unless there is a larger scheme at work, we must be honest with ourselves in this situation. Are they in favor of the collapse? Would they like to implement a new system? Yes, that is the strategy. Their goal is to overthrow the current system and install a new one. In fact, there is another section of this that is merely a quote. This quote will be read to us. When you're sitting on $37 trillion, Santa Claus can't fix a liquidity crisis, Matt continued. The public debt is $37 trillion, and the aggregate debt of governments, businesses, and families is nearly $100 trillion. Yes, this is the main problem, and I believe that everyone should be aware of this problem. At the same time that every other country is continuing to turn against the dollar, the US is drowning in debt. And now on top of that, we do consider gold. Recently, Andy Schectman posted a fantastic video clip about gold being classed as a Tier 1 reserve asset. It is being hoarded by central banks. It is the basis for a new currency. The United States is also importing it. What are they aware of that the general public is not? Take a look at this. If you stand back and are truly being truthful with yourself, why would the world's most powerful bank reclassify gold as the only other Tier 1 reserve asset in 2019? In light of this, why would the world's most well-funded and knowledgeable traders, the central banks, embark on a buying and repatriation spree that has never been seen before since 2017? Why would that carry on unchecked and make it more personal? Why has the United States been a net importer of the only other Tier 1 reserve asset in the world since November? Dilma Rousseff, the former president of Brazil and head of the new development bank, informed us that they have agreed in principle to a new settlement currency called the unit, which is 40% gold-backed and redeemable upon demand. This is why there are discussions about it being tied to a new system when we see the nations that are compulsively hoarding gold. Additionally, Judy Shelton, whom you interviewed, told me that Trump is sticking to her opinion that gold-backed treasuries will be issued in July 2026, the 250th anniversary, notwithstanding everything from accumulation to repatriation to reclassification to sluggish rising higher. And even though this may seem absurd, if you give it some thought, you realize that this is actually happening. These are real facts, and you know what's crazy about it all is that during the past 24 months or so, the majority of people have forgotten entirely about the fight for gold-backed currencies. Large countries are moving toward gold-backed currencies, and even U.S. states are attempting to introduce gold-backed currencies. Texas played a significant role in that. When we consider what is happening here, we are beginning to notice a significant change that relates to the U.S. dollar, and the reserve status is completely in doubt. We recently received a significant news from a major U.S. bond company. PMCO is cautioning that if foreign capital pours into U.S. assets, the U.S. dollar's reserve currency status is not assured. Thus, we are discussing global flows. It may indicate a more multipolar world with less dependence on a single reserve currency if that begins to decline around U.S. assets. I have previously discussed this topic on this channel. You know what? Other countries have been advocating for a multipolar world, the BRICS, and if you believe that none of this is prearranged, rewind to March of 2022, when we imposed sanctions on Russia. A day later, not even a full day later, Executive Order 14067 was dropped, underscoring the U.S.'s push for digital currencies. And you know what makes the concept of having several reserve currencies so absurd? Yes, let's return to 2023's July 4th. Going back nearly 2 years, I said in an article that I really believe we are moving toward a global financial system that does not use restricted money. Retail use of stable coins issued by the government will coexist with the decentralized global economy of CBDC. I believe that wholesale and banks will be the main customers for CBDCs. Stable coins, however, will be driven by retail. CBDCs won't be used or seen by retail. The U.S. is currently experiencing the same situation. The Trump administration is actively promoting stablecoins. They claim that it will uphold the U.S. dollar's standing as a reserve currency. The U.S. currency will be strengthened as a result. The U.S. will become very powerful in the area of cryptocurrency and digital assets as a result. But you know what? Stablecoins based outside of the U.S. are also beginning to appear. On this, the UK is making progress. On this, Europe is making progress. In regards to Russia, the BRICS recently said that they are moving forward with this. Stable coins are therefore increasing when we consider what is happening here. I mentioned that both private and public ledger technologies will be used to drive and connect all of this. For this new system, interoperability will be essential, but bridge currencies will also be absolutely necessary. Reserve currencies will no longer exist, and countries will be in charge of their own economic cycles. Other countries shouldn't have to suffer if the U.S. wants to ruin their economy. This will be made possible by the new system. Although we tend to focus a lot on the bad aspects of CBDCs and this new system, there may be a less bleak future.